I'm Dr. Elena Rodriguez, and this is the story of how a CNN breaking news alert changed everything between me and my family in the most unexpected way possible. It was supposed to be a joyful Saturday afternoon in October. My cousin Maria was getting married, and our entire extended family had gathered at my parents' house in Los Angeles for the traditional pre-wedding family photo session. The photographer had set up his equipment in the backyard. The lighting was perfect, and everyone was dressed in their finest clothes. Everyone except me. I had arrived 20 minutes late, still wearing my lab coat over casual clothes, my hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, and my glasses slightly askew from rushing. I'd been at the university lab since 5 in the morning, working on what I considered the most important research of my career. But to my family, I just looked like their perpetually disheveled daughter who couldn't get her life together. "Elena, Mija, you can't be in the photos looking like that," my mother, Carmen, whispered urgently as she approached me with that familiar look of disappointment in her eyes. "This is Maria's special day. We need to look presentable." I glanced down at my appearance and realized she was right about one thing. I did look disheveled. But what she didn't understand was why. "I'm sorry, Mama. I was at the lab working on something really important. I can go change quickly if you just give me 15 minutes. But my mother was already shaking her head, her voice rising just enough for our relatives to overhear. "No, Elena. She's too embarrassing for family photos," she declared, loud enough that my aunts, uncles, and cousins all turned to look at us. "Look at her. 32 years old, and she still dresses like a graduate student who hasn't slept in days." The sting of her words hit me harder than I expected. This wasn't the first time my mother had expressed embarrassment about my appearance or lifestyle, but saying it so publicly, in front of our entire extended family, felt like a new low. My Aunt Rosa chimed in with a sympathetic but equally cutting tone. "Carmen's right, Elena. You're a beautiful girl, but you never make an effort. When was the last time you went shopping for nice clothes? Or got your hair done professionally?" My uncle Miguel added his opinion with a disapproving shake of his head. "In my day, women your age were focused on finding good husbands and starting families, not spending all their time in laboratories playing with test tubes." I felt my cheeks burn with humiliation as the photographer waited awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding in front of him. My cousins were already positioned for the photo, looking polished and put together, while I stood there like an outsider in my own family. "Maybe Elena can take the photos of us," suggested my cousin Patricia with false sweetness. "That way she can be helpful without, being in them." The suggestion was met with murmurs of agreement from several family members. I watched as my own relatives essentially voted to exclude me from what was supposed to be a family celebration. The photographer looked to me questioningly, clearly unsure how to handle the situation. "It's fine," I said quietly, stepping back toward the house. "I'll just go inside and let you all take your perfect family photos." As I walked away, I heard my mother explaining to the photographer she works at some university lab. "Very messy job. Always has chemicals on her clothes. We worry about her, She's too old to be living like this." What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that those chemicals on my clothes were from groundbreaking research that had consumed my life for the past 3 years. I was part of a small team at UCLA working on revolutionary cancer treatment protocols. Specifically, I had developed a new approach to immunotherapy that was showing unprecedented results in early trials. The hidden truth: for 3 years, I had been working 16-hour days, 7 days a week, developing a new cancer immunotherapy treatment. My research focused on engineering T cells to better recognize and attack specific cancer markers, work that could potentially save millions of lives. I retreated to my childhood bedroom, where I could still hear the laughter and conversation from the backyard photo session. My phone buzzed with work emails, including several from my research partner Dr. James Chin about our upcoming presentation to the Nobel Committee's preliminary review board. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my family saw me as an embarrassment, the international scientific community was preparing to evaluate work that could change the course of human medicine. The months leading up to this moment had been a whirlwind of secrecy and intense pressure. Due to the sensitive nature of our research and the potential implications for pharmaceutical companies, We had been working under strict non-disclosure agreements. I couldn't discuss my work with anyone outside the research team, which meant my family had no idea what I was actually doing with my life. To them, I was just their unmarried daughter who worked at some lab and never seemed to have money for nice clothes or a decent apartment. They didn't understand that I had deliberately chosen to live simply, pouring every resource into my research. My modest studio apartment near the university, my secondhand clothes, my beat-up Honda Civic, all of these were conscious choices that allowed me to focus entirely on my work. But try explaining that to a family that measured success by traditional markers: marriage, children, nice houses, expensive cars, and designer clothes. In their eyes, I was a 32-year-old failure who had prioritized education over real life. An hour later, after the photo session had ended, I rejoined the family in the living room where they were showing off the pictures on the photographer's digital camera. The images were beautiful. Everyone looked happy and polished, like the perfect American family. And there was absolutely no evidence that I existed. "See how nice we all look when everyone makes an effort," my mother said pointedly, though she wasn't looking directly at me. "Maria, these will be perfect for your wedding announcement in the newspaper." My cousin Carlos, who worked as a car salesman and never missed an opportunity to assert his superiority over me, decided to twist the knife a little deeper. "Elena, maybe you should consider getting a job that pays well enough for you to afford nice clothes." "I mean, how much can they possibly pay you at that lab?" "Laboratory research is important work," I replied quietly, trying to maintain my dignity while feeling increasingly isolated among my own relatives. "Important to who?" laughed my Uncle Miguel. "You're 32 years old, Elena. When are you going to get a real job? Start a real life? Your cousin Patricia just bought her second house, and here you are still playing scientist like you're in college." The conversation continued in this vein for another 20 minutes, with various family members offering unsolicited advice about my career choices, my appearance, my lifestyle, and my apparent inability to grow up and embrace traditional adult responsibilities. I was about to excuse myself and leave early when my cousin Maria's fiancé turned on the television to check the football scores. The TV came on to CNN, where a breaking news banner was scrolling across the bottom of the screen. At first, no one was paying attention. The adults were still discussing my various shortcomings while the kids played in the corner. But then the CNN anchor's words cut through the family chatter like a knife through butter. "Breaking news. The Nobel Committee has announced this year's Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine will be awarded to Dr. Elena Rodriguez of UCLA for her groundbreaking work in cancer immunotherapy." The room fell completely silent. Everyone turned to look at the television screen, where my professional headshot, the one from my UCLA faculty page, was now displayed prominently next to the CNN logo. The anchor continued speaking, but I could barely hear her words over the sound of my heart pounding and the complete, stunned silence of my family. Dr. Rodriguez's innovative approach to T-cell engineering has shown remarkable success in clinical trials, with a 93% remission rate for patients with previously terminal cancers. Her work represents a fundamental breakthrough in immunotherapy and could potentially save millions of lives worldwide. The camera cut to footage from my lab, showing the equipment I worked with daily, the same equipment that had left chemicals on my clothes that my mother found so embarrassing. Then it showed clips from a medical conference where I was presenting my findings to a room full of international experts. The Nobel Committee praised Dr. Rodriguez's dedication to her research, noting that she has worked virtually around the clock for the past 3 years to develop and refine her treatment protocols. The committee also announced that the prize comes with a monetary award of approximately $1.1 million. I watched my family's faces as the reality of what they were seeing slowly sank in. My mother's mouth was literally hanging open. My Uncle Miguel, who had just finished lecturing me about getting a real job, looked like he had seen a ghost. My cousin Carlos, who had mocked my salary 5 minutes earlier, was staring at the screen in complete disbelief. The anchor continued. Dr. Rodriguez, who is only 32 years old, will become one of the youngest Nobel Prize winners in history. Her research team at UCLA has been working in relative secrecy due to the sensitive nature of their breakthrough, which explains why this announcement has come as a surprise to many in the scientific community. Then came the moment that changed everything. The CNN cameras cut to live footage from outside my apartment building, where reporters were already gathering hoping to interview me. My neighbors were being questioned about what I was like to live next to, and they were describing me as quiet, hardworking, and always carrying scientific papers. One neighbor, Mrs. Chin, told the reporter, "Dr. Rodriguez is the most dedicated person I've ever met. She's at the lab before dawn and comes home after midnight most days." I always wondered what important work she was doing, and now I know. We're so proud to have a Nobel Prize winner in our building. The irony was overwhelming. My neighbors, who barely knew me, were expressing pride in my achievements, while my own family had just spent the afternoon discussing what a disappointment I was. As the news coverage continued, more details emerged about my work. The reporter explained how my research had started when I was a graduate student and lost my grandmother to pancreatic cancer. The traditional treatments had failed her, and I had dedicated my career to finding better options for patients facing similar diagnoses. Dr. Rodriguez has published over 40 peer-reviewed papers in top medical journals, the anchor reported. Her colleagues describe her as brilliant, tireless, and completely committed to helping cancer patients who have run out of other options. Finally, my Aunt Rosa broke the stunned silence in our living room. "Elena," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Is that really you on television?" I looked around the room at my family members, who were all staring at me with expressions ranging from shock to embarrassment to dawning comprehension. These were the same people who, an hour earlier, had decided I was too much of an embarrassment to include in family photos. "Yes," I said simply. "That's me." My mother was the first to try to recover from the shock. "But Elena, why didn't you tell us? We had no idea you were doing such important work." I looked at her with a mixture of hurt and vindication. "I tried to tell you it was important work, Mama. But you were all so focused on how I looked and how much money I made that nobody ever asked what I was actually doing." The truth was, I had tried to share my excitement about my research with my family many times over the years. But every time I brought up my work, they would change the subject to when I was going to get married, or why I couldn't afford nicer clothes, or how disappointed my late father would have been that I wasn't living a normal life. My cousin Carlos, who had been questioning my salary just minutes before, now looked mortified. "Elena, I had no idea. I'm sorry for what I said earlier." But I wasn't finished. 3 years of feeling misunderstood and judged by my own family had built up too much hurt for me to simply accept their sudden change of heart. "You want to know something interesting?" I said, my voice steady but firm. "That messy lab job that you all think pays so poorly? Even before the Nobel Prize money, my research grants and consulting work have been bringing in over $200,000 a year. I live simply because I choose to, not because I have to." The room fell silent again as this new information sank in. "And those chemicals on my clothes that embarrass you so much, Mama? Those come from working with compounds that could cure the disease that killed Grandma Rosa. Every stain on my lab coat represents hours of work that could save someone's grandmother or mother or child." My mother's eyes filled with tears as I mentioned her mother, who had died of cancer when I was in graduate school. That loss had been the driving force behind my career choice, but I had never been able to make my family understand the connection. "As for my appearance," I continued, "I dress the way I do because I spend 14 to 16 hours a day in a laboratory trying to solve problems that could help millions of people. I don't have time for shopping trips or salon visits because I'm too busy trying to make a difference in the world." The CNN coverage continued in the background, now showing interviews with some of my former professors and research colleagues. Dr. Sarah Thompson, my graduate advisor, was explaining how I had been one of the most promising students she had ever worked with. "Elena has always been driven by a desire to help others," Dr. Thompson told the reporter. "She could have taken a high-paying job at any pharmaceutical company years ago, but she chose to stay in academic research because she believed it was the best way to make her discoveries available to patients who need them most." My cousin Patricia, who had suggested I take the family photos instead of being in them, now looked like she wanted to disappear into the couch. Elena, I'm so sorry. We didn't understand. No, I agreed. You didn't understand. And you didn't try to understand. For 3 years, I've been working on research that could change medicine forever, and all you could see was that my clothes came from Target and my car was old. My uncle Miguel, who had lectured me about getting a real job, was now staring at the television where the reporter was describing the global impact of my research. Clinical trials were already underway at major cancer centers around the world, with results that were exceeding everyone's expectations. The financial implications of Dr. Rodriguez's breakthrough are also significant, the CNN anchor reported. Several major pharmaceutical companies are reportedly interested in licensing her treatment protocols, which could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars in the coming years. As if the Nobel Prize announcement wasn't enough, my phone started ringing. The caller ID showed it was Dr. Chen, my research partner, calling with what I assumed would be congratulations and updates about the media attention. Elena, Dr. Chen's excited voice was loud enough for several family members to overhear. Have you seen the news? The committee moved up our announcement because of media leaks, but the official ceremony is still planned for December in Stockholm. Also, I just got off the phone with the university president. They want to offer you the new endowed chair position and a substantial research budget increase. I stepped away from my family to take the call privately, but they had already heard enough to understand that this was just the beginning of major changes in my life and career. When I returned to the living room, the CNN coverage had shifted to showing reactions from cancer patients who had participated in my clinical trials. A woman named Jennifer Martinez was crying as she told the reporter how my treatment had eliminated her terminal lung cancer after conventional therapies had failed. Dr. Rodriguez saved my life, Jennifer said through tears. I was given 3 months to live, and now I'm cancer-free. She's a hero. Watching my family see this testimony was perhaps the most satisfying moment of the entire afternoon. These were real people whose lives had been changed by the work I did in my messy lab job while wearing my embarrassing clothes. My mother finally spoke again, her voice shaky with emotion. Elena, Mija, I owe you the biggest apology of my life. I've been so wrong about everything. Yes, I agreed quietly. You have been wrong. All of you have been wrong. The next few hours were a blur of phone calls from reporters, colleagues, and university administrators. My family sat in stunned silence as I fielded interview requests and coordination calls for the media attention that was about to completely change my life. By evening, my story was trending on social media. #NobelElena was being shared thousands of times, with people expressing admiration for my dedication to cancer research and criticizing the tendency to judge others based on superficial appearances. One particularly viral tweet read, Dr. Elena Rodriguez spent 3 years working 16-hour days to cure cancer while her family complained about her clothes. Today, she won the Nobel Prize. Maybe we should judge people by their contributions, not their fashion choices. As the day progressed, more details about my research became public. The media reported that my treatment had shown success rates that were unprecedented in oncology, and that major medical centers around the world were already implementing my protocols for their most challenging cases. The financial impact was also becoming clear. In addition to the Nobel Prize money, I was being offered consulting contracts, speaking engagements, and research partnerships that would make me financially secure for life. The irony wasn't lost on me that my family had worried about my ability to afford nice clothes while I was developing intellectual property worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That evening, as the initial shock wore off, my family members began approaching me individually to apologize. My mother was the most emotional, crying as she tried to explain how sorry she was for not supporting my career choices. I thought I was protecting you, she sobbed. I thought you were wasting your life, and I was worried you would end up alone and struggling. I never imagined you were doing something so important. My cousin Carlos approached me with tears in his eyes. Elena, I've been thinking about what you said earlier. I make fun of your old car and your simple clothes, but you've been saving lives while I've been selling cars. I'm ashamed of how I treated you. Even my uncle Miguel, who had been the most critical of my lifestyle, came to me with a humble apology. I judged you by old-fashioned standards, he admitted. I didn't understand that times have changed and that a woman can make contributions to the world that are more important than getting married and having children. But the most meaningful conversation came with my cousin Maria, whose wedding had been the occasion for the family gathering. She pulled me aside as the evening was winding down. "Elena," she said quietly, "I want you to know that I always admired you, even when the others were criticizing. I could see how passionate you were about your work, and I respected that even when I didn't understand it. I'm sorry I didn't speak up for you today." "Thank you," I replied. "That means a lot to me." "I have a request," Maria continued. "I know this sounds crazy after what happened today, but would you consider being in some wedding photos with me? Not the formal family ones. Those are already done, but maybe some casual ones? I would be honored to have a Nobel Prize winner as my cousin in my wedding pictures." Her request was touching, and I agreed. We took several photos together, and for the first time all day, I felt like I was truly part of the family celebration. Over the following weeks, my life changed in ways I could never have imagined. The Nobel Prize ceremony in Stockholm was magnificent, and several family members flew to Sweden to support me, the same family members who had been embarrassed by my appearance just weeks before. The media attention led to opportunities one had never dreamed of. I was invited to speak at medical conferences around the world, consult with pharmaceutical companies developing new treatments, and advise government agencies on cancer research policy. More importantly, my research was being implemented in cancer centers globally, and the success rates continued to exceed expectations. Thousands of patients who would have died from their cancers were now in remission, and the numbers grew every month. My financial situation changed dramatically as well. The combination of the Nobel Prize money, consulting fees, speaking engagements, and licensing agreements for my research meant I could afford any lifestyle I chose. Ironically, I chose to continue living simply, though I did upgrade my apartment and buy a more reliable car. My relationship with my family evolved too, though it took time to rebuild the trust and respect that had been damaged by years of criticism and misunderstanding. My mother, in particular, worked hard to make amends and eventually became one of my strongest supporters. The experience taught me valuable lessons about the importance of staying true to your values and passions, even when others don't understand or support them. It also highlighted how dangerous it can be to judge people based on superficial appearances or conventional markers of success. 6 months after that fateful family gathering, I received a letter from Jennifer Martinez, the cancer patient whose testimony had been featured in the CNN coverage. She wrote to tell me that she had just celebrated her first cancer-free anniversary and wanted to thank me personally for giving her the chance to see her daughter graduate from high school. Reading her letter reminded me why I had chosen my career path in the first place. The Nobel Prize, the money, and even my family's newfound respect were all secondary to the real purpose of my work, helping people like Jennifer have more time with the people they love. Today, as I reflect on that October afternoon when my mother declared me too embarrassing for family photos, I'm grateful for how everything unfolded. The experience was painful, but it led to important conversations and ultimately strengthened my relationships with my family members. More importantly, it reinforced my commitment to pursuing meaningful work regardless of how others perceive it. Success comes in many forms, and the most important achievements are often the ones that help other people, even if they don't come with immediate recognition or conventional rewards. My advice to anyone facing criticism for pursuing unconventional paths is this: stay focused on your values and the impact you want to make in the world. The people who truly matter will eventually understand and support you, and the recognition you deserve will come when the time is right. Sometimes the work that looks least impressive from the outside is the work that has the greatest impact on the world. And sometimes the people who see you as their biggest embarrassment are simply the ones who don't yet understand the value of what you're contributing to humanity.